Hey guys, Dark Humility here with our PD2 Arcane Sanctuary Farming Guide. For those who haven't watched my LOD content, you might not have seen the crazy arcane farming that I typically have done and the tests that I've consistently done in order to show just how insane the Arcane Sanctuary is in terms of its farming potential in every version of Diablo 2, at least that I've ever played, PD2 and LOD. Of course, Arcane Sanctuary, though, is a place of great mystery. A lot of people don't know why you should farm it, how you should farm it, what are you even doing when you are farming it. This video, though, of course, is kind of a sequel, kind of like an updated, remastered version, though, of my arcane farming guide I've made for LOD. And also, of course, it is based on the 5,000 run data set that I've done in Lord of Destruction as well, which I'll actually link that video in case you want item analysis in terms of expected drops for 5,000 player 7 runs. Now, playing solo in PD2, you have players 5 runs, but players 5 is nearly as good as players 7, and so this video will be just as relevant to what we'll be, of course, discussing here. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about what is Arcane. Arcane Sanctuary is an area at the end of Act 2 that you can always farm consistently upon reloading the game, just like every other Lord of Destruction area. It doesn't require a special map or anything where you have to like reroll the stats, which I would say maybe is one of its advantages, particularly when you're under geared and when you're just trying to farm certain types of items like currency items, which we will get into. But in general, there are 4 directions. 3 directions have super chests. One has 2 super chests, the other 2 have 3 super chests. The other side at the end has the Summoner. The Summoner, of course, dropping hate keys and also having kind of like a mini boss loot table, similar to other key bosses like the Countess and Nilithok. So now that we've gotten what is it and its basics, but there's 4 different directions. There's like a stair direction. This is the portal direction, though. There's a stair direction, there's a flat direction, and there's a platform direction. This would be the flat one. We'll talk about that more in a bit, though. They always are randomized unless you're in single player and you have static saved maps. So keep that in mind. Depending on what build you're using, this might be important, which is something we'll also get into. Alright, why do you want to farm Arcane, though? Arcane has 8 super chests, which can drop up to low rune, so Ohm and low maxing out from each chest, which is pretty awesome. And then of course you have consistent regular chests as well spread throughout each area, which if you have a sorceress you can consistently hit as you are moving along and targeting the monsters. And most importantly, it has the highest specter or ghost type monster density in the game. There are other areas that are very good that have these types of monsters, which would be like Chaos Sanctuary, Talrosh's Tomb. Chaos being a very prominent one, though. The Stormcasters have the same type of loot table. However, in that scenario, though, those aren't nearly as dense and you can't clear them and kill them nearly as fast as you can with most builds in Arcane. So while Chaos is a much more rounded area, and because it also has Stormcasters and it has a boss and it has super uniques, those types of loot tables make it much more well rounded, making it also a tier 1 farming area. Of course, Arcane is also a tier 1 farming area. Now you might be asking, what's so special about the ghosts? What is so special about those specters? Well, the specters have special loot tables. They can't drop armor treasure classes. They can't drop weapon treasure classes. In other words, no armors or weapons can ever drop from those dudes, period. Which is pretty significant because that leaves a lot larger pieces of the pie for everything they still can drop. And in total, that means in practice, mathematically, they have a 3.8 times higher chance of dropping all the other stuff, like scrolls, potions, mana potions, scrolls, but then most importantly, the things they're really trying to target, which are the runes, the charms, the jewels, the jewelry, the gems, and the PD2 items like Worldstone shards, maps, Larzuk puzzle pieces, Larzuk puzzle boxes, Uber materials, and ultra rares, possibly, such as mirrors or vials. I have never found a mirror or vial farming Arcane myself, but other people farming Arcane seem to be finding them more often, so I'm assuming it may also apply to things like that, considering that they may too have a larger piece of the pie as well. So that is pretty interesting stuff. So they can still drop all those items, and those other items become far more frequent. So despite maybe not having the density or the prominent loot tables of other very prominent farming areas, the ghosts have way higher chances of dropping these things, which means if you can farm these ghosts efficiently, you'll be good to go. Now, real quick, let's talk about builds that can farm Arcane before we start talking about the best methods and efficient ways of farming Arcane. So builds, let's see here. Builds are quite interesting. So let's actually pull up this will be a plug for my ultimate farming guide in case you haven't seen it. You can see each build here, the mobility class of each class and the damage type of each build. And if you match that up to the best LOD farming areas, you'll know what your build can farm the best. So you'll know what the overall difficulty of the area is, whether or not Magic Find kind of helps with farming that area, and among other things. Like how much it affects it, like with Arcane, Magic Find kind of helps, but it's not necessary for the core items you're actually going for. So that is kind of interesting. And then you'll know that, what kinds of items you're targeting there, whether it's like all types of items or whether or not you're targeting certain items, like in this case, the runes, charms, and jewels. The core currency that can make you fabulously rich. And, of course, the damage types that are best at farming it, the best damage types. So just because there's these are the best damage types doesn't mean they're the only damage types that can farm any given area, but it does mean there might be some issues. And of course we'll talk about that a bit more. And then of course you have the rank of the area. As you can see, Arcane, based on the value of the loot you'll get in an average any given period of time, will be higher than maybe those tier 2 areas, whereas other tier 1 areas can at least compete across basically comparable value, high value loot, so depending on what it is. As you can see, of course, with things like Chaos is an amazing area, Travancore, Mephisto, bosses, cows, those are all very high value areas in terms of valuing your time. So very, very good stuff. Overall, that is indeed the case. Now, what is interesting about all this, though, is that Arcane is uniquely positioned to give you those types of items we mentioned earlier. And those types of items are always high value. One thing that is very useful about farming a high currency area is that unlike trying to farm generic items in the late game or something where only certain corruptions tend to be valuable, high runes are always valuable throughout the whole duration of a season. Charms are always valuable throughout the whole duration of a season. These are things you can't corrupt, but they're always in high demand. Godly jewels, like max min jewels with high ED. 100% can be found here. And you could find 40 life skillers in here. You could find the godliest jewels. You could find, Stone of Jordans. You could find tons of gems faster than anywhere else in order to get your crafting going. There is a lot of things you can do. So, and of course, runes can drop up to Cham from the random monsters, including the ghosts that you're targeting. So while the chest can drop only up to low, everything else can drop up to Cham. The only weakness, in my opinion, of the Arcane Farming Zone is its area level. Area level is 79, as you can see right there. 79 is, it means that not every treasure class of item can drop here. You cannot farm a Griffin's here. Now, if it becomes corrupted, a corrupted zone, which, happens on a rotation and only happens for 15 minutes, all of its weaknesses, its only weakness, I should say, disappears. But yeah, as we saw there at the Ultimate Farming Guide, though, lightning builds are best positioned to farm this area. There are no natural lightning immunes in this area. That's mostly what it's based on, is things like immunities, and of course the ability of various elements to just deal damage effectively in a zone, which is usually just immunities, if we're being honest. And this character here that I have that's going to demo this is a 200 faster cast rate charged bolt sorceress. In general, mobility is highly valued in Arcane, but it is not necessarily essential. As we'll see with one-way Arcane, you can actually use less mobile builds to still great effect in here, whereas with highly mobile builds you could actually do four-way Arcane and save some time on reloading the game and bowing and things of that nature, so you can just stay in the game and farm longer. That does give lightning sorceress builds, which have very high mobility, a bit of an advantage. However, even without the crazy mobility of a sorceress, you're still going to be farming very efficiently on less mobile lightning builds, such as assassins with maybe Claws of Thunder or Phoenix Strike, second stage, utilizing that huge AoE lightning, or of course Lightning Fury, Lightning Strike, Power Strike, Amazons. Lots of things of that nature. You just got to increase your movement speed as much as possible on the Amazon, for instance, or on the Assassin, and then you have to also utilize like Dragonflight. But mobility in general is valuable, period. Less mobility, one way, more mobility, four way. Now we'll talk about, of course, what that actually means here in a second. But now that I've kind of gotten that through, oh, interesting. Rare amulet. It's actually not bad, but probably not that great, if we're being honest, for damage or otherwise. Anyway, probably rather have like a +3 ammy. But let's go over a very important concept though before we actually get into more of the build type things. So yeah, well, lightning builds might be the best because of the immunities. The ghosts themselves have resistances or immunities to every element except for lightning and fire. So fire is also not bad in here. Like a combustion sorceress with 200 faster cast rate would be nearly as efficient as this, in my opinion. I think the big weakness is that unless you have a very powerful one, you're not going to be one-shotting the Hell Clans, which are the fire immunes, and thus you might not be getting the full benefit of killing those collateral monsters for additional loot potential. So let's go into a game, though. I'm just going to show you guys something real quick. So when I make a new game, I automatically will always appear in Act 4. And the way to do this, by the way, this is very key for any LOD farming that you're doing in Act 2 or 3, in my opinion. So that's like Travancore, Arcane, Mephisto. You really want to make sure that you're doing .set-home space 4. Act 4, in my opinion, is the best overall town to have as your home base, because you can always telekinesis the waypoint. The stash is right there, Kane is right there. Act 1 can also be decent, and so can Act 5 for certain farms. But Like, in other words, you could just spawn in Act 5 for Eldritch, and it probably won't make a big difference. But you could even gain some time, even in Act 5, by spawning in Act 4 for farming, like, an Eldritch Shank or something like that. So that is actually a very important resource. Now, if you want to set your home to anything, you can. Oops, I did it wrong. Gotta put that dash in there. So, anyway, but we're gonna set it... Oops, we're gonna set it back to 4. I'm used to spawning items on closed beta, can't you tell? That's funny. Too much of that going on. I can't get it out of my brain. Anyway, so that's really cool stuff there. So that means that you don't have to do the Walk of Shame. You're not gonna spawn here. So normally where you would spawn, like on LOD or D2R if you were farming Arcane, is you would spawn all the way down here in the very beginning of Act 2, where there's Warv. And the most efficient way to get back to Act 2 would be to take him back to Act 1, and then go here. But notice, if I'm in Act 4, and I'm sitting here, all I have to do is this. It saves more than 1 second, it saves a few seconds, so it actually adds up quite a bit over time. Overall, it's just less annoying, and it means you have like instant access to the stash and things of that nature. So that's like quality of life number 1. Alright, so Project Diablo 2, you know, I haven't made like an arcane farming video particularly for PD2 ever, which is why I'm making this here. I made it for LOD. I have my data sheet from LOD, the data video, which I will link the data video because I think it's very interesting, and I think you'll understand just how ridiculously powerful this area is. You'll get at least a bit of an understanding there. But that whole like setting your Act to Act 4 thing is actually like very, very powerful, particularly for builds that lack mobility like a sorceress, because you're going to be reloading more often to get that one-way arcane, right? And PD2 also makes arcane a lot better in a couple other ways as well. It widens the paths, which definitely helps the mobility of a lot of builds, but more importantly, unlike LOD, the ghosts, if they die over the edge, will still drop loot. So that's also really, really freaking cool. So that means you're not going to have any kind of issues with that whatsoever. So you could kill them over the edge. So unlike my previous video where you have to kind of like make sure the ghosts are on the platform, or you have to like kind of teleport on around to kind of guide them onto the platform, gather them onto the platform, which is something that I specified in my first LOD arcane farming guide. That is not a thing here. You could just go buck wild and kill them wherever they're at, and you just want to target them as fast as possible as you're moving along. Now in general, to make the most of arcane on a 4-way farmer, so we're going to do the 4-way farmer first because I'm playing a 200 faster cast rate lightning sorceress, which is really the epitome of the 4-way farming approach. I mean, so would a combustion sorceress, and you know, anyone that's fire based as well would be pretty good. And even highly mobile, like multi-element builds can work very well as well. But in general, the sorceress with lightning and fire kind of has a bit of a huge advantage when it comes to 4-way. 1-way, which only uses the flat direction, which, you know, we'll get into in a bit. There's a lot more builds that can work. Like even Vengeance could work. Things that do other types of damage can work once you get high enough damage. Like for instance, Necromancer does so much damage with Bone Spear that even though the ghosts have 50 magic res, it can still farm them pretty efficiently, just because it does so much damage. There's a lot of builds with high mobility that can still do very well 4-way, like for instance Bone Spear Necromancer. Once your damage is high enough, once you have that Sanctuary Aura to debuff the ghost's magic res, it'll work just as well. A lot of things like that do very well, but Necromancer, I like to highlight that Necromancer build though, because Necromancer also has very high mobility. So you could definitely do this with that Necromancer build. Despite the ghosts having a lot of magic res, like I said, the ghosts are either resistant or immune to the other 4 elements. So fire and lightning they're most vulnerable to. everything in here is most vulnerable to lightning, just period. There are no implicit lightning immunes. It means that an elite has to roll certain stats for it to be lightning immune. That makes it to where you can either skip that elite or you could debuff them and you could still kill them. So that's really good. The other thing, of course, though, is that it's important to specify exactly how immune each element is. So I believe for like poison res, they're like around like 70 poison res. It's like, I don't know, it's like 70 to 80, somewhere in that zone, I believe. So the ghosts are 70 to 80% poison resistant. Once again, you're really targeting the ghosts and the chests and the summoner. It's really what you want to do. Cold res, I believe, is 75, if I remember right. And then magic res, I believe, is 50. And then they're immune to physical. So physical builds are the worst, period, in here. Ironically, because this season I actually, because I debuff enough physical res with amp and with amplified damage and with battle cry, my Blade Fury Sen actually found a Cham rune messing around in here, which is interesting. Towards the very beginning of the season, we're about like 2 weeks in now. So, but like, that was actually pretty funny though. I found that entertaining. Anyway, as I say this, of course, but maybe I'll post that video, but yeah. Anyway, so physical damage builds, though, in general, though, have a big disadvantage, though, because one of the major monsters you're targeting here is actually physically immune. I don't recommend running physical builds in here. That wasn't very efficient with the Blade Sin, and in general, it won't be, even with, like, Innocence and Perfect Gear, which we did not have, but, you know, on my solo self-found hardcore mission here, you know, our gear is kind of limited. But even if I had the perfect gear, physical builds are still not going to be nearly as efficient as the other elements. And once you get enough negative res on any element, you could farm this area with any element. But the reason, you know, it's specified as lightning on the Ultimate Farming Guide is the Ultimate Farming Guide is targeted towards early season or just, you know, early game Lord of Destruction Hell area farming. So it's targeted for builds that are not super geared. And this area is friendly to builds that aren't super geared, but it's also highly efficient even when you're capable of mapping for farming those specific items, the runes, charms, jewels, jewelry, gems, and PD2 items. Whereas maps will always probably be more efficient overall, particularly once you get to farming maps, you know, clearing out the maps of most of the monsters between 10 to 15 minute maps. Overall, you're going to be making more wealth than you would in here on average, but still, this area is so much more consistent when it comes to currency because it specializes in it. It's way more efficient when it comes to the charms and whatnot, the runes, and that kind of thing. So if you find yourself having a problem with corruption RNG, and or you're playing softcore and people only want the godliest corruptions, but you still want currency to be able to buy those godliest corruptions, this is your solution. This is one of the top farms in LOD, period, and it competes with maps just via its currency pool. That being said, even though it's only a 79 area, you're going to get items like Shakos in here and other things as well quite frequently, particularly if you boost your magic find to reasonable levels. Alright, now, of course, this tutorial, of course, has gone already a while because there's a lot of things we definitely wanted to talk about. We want to talk about some of the nuances, some of the types of builds that can do it. There's a lot more builds that I haven't even mentioned that are capable of doing this. Just keep in mind the difference between 4-way and 1-way though. So 4-way, we're going to run every direction and then we're going to reload the game. And we don't care which direction we start. We have a sorceress, we have super high mobility, as it shows on my Ultimate Farming Guide, and we are capable of doing this incredibly efficiently and incredibly fast. So of course you could bow here, you could bow even in town when you load up the game, not there, in town. You can bow in town in Season 11 if you don't know, so it's really safe even on hardcore, which we're playing here. And for now, I guess I could actually pull up the, let's see, yeah, the farm info panel. So these are my basic stats on this character. This is not a build guide, but in general, I will quickly go over my gear just to show you guys how easily you can do this. This is on solo self-found, so once again, no trading. I actually still don't have any lightning GCs. I have a fire GC, and we have a lot of other GCs, but we're working on getting GCs for like my Blade Fury Sin and other things, so we can keep powering them up and doing harder and harder content. But in general, you'll notice that a lot of these charms here are pretty sick for solo self-found. You might be asking, how did you find so many? Well, that's the magic of Arcane. That's all I really have to tell you. We've only done one 10-hour session of farming this, and we already have tons of good charms. Now, they weren't all found in Arcane. Some of them were found by the Blade Fury Sin, farming Chaos or Trav or whatever. But here you have it, though. So we got a lot of charms. We have an Ondels. Ondels is really good. It's like basically any staff that gives very high faster cast rate could be used to kind of I don't know, I guess catapult your faster cast rate towards 200 faster cast rate, which is really your goal, as long as you have enough faster cast rate elsewhere. So you could have a staff with less faster cast rate, and then you could run like a 30 faster cast rate armor. You could run a 20 faster cast rate 2 Sorceress Helm or 1 Sorceress Helm. But this is what we're using. You'll notice we have gotten pretty lucky with some things, like this ring, for instance. You know, we have an Iraq. Overall, we have 32 skills. I'm going to show off a very Season 11 build. This is very flavor of the month here. This is Charge Bolt. Charge Bolt can pierce now, for those that didn't get the memo. And this is actually very effective now at plowing through Arcane incredibly quickly. So this wasn't possible last season. Last season, I would have run 200 faster cast rate for that teleport breakpoint, and we would have gotten the 194 breakpoint for lightning, chain lightning. But now Charge Bolt is on the same it's on the same breakpoints as teleport, so that's very useful, right? Both got 200. If I change the lightning here, which I think I could show just briefly, you'll notice that actually, I think lightning has the same breakpoint too. Maybe it's just chain lightning. Yeah, it's chain lightning. It's 194. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, PD2 made lightning a bit different than chain lightning. But yeah, it's got better breakpoints. It can be cast a lot faster. But chain lightning is also a very effective Sorc build as well, and so is of course Nova. The one thing about Nova though is that Nova requires a lot more gear, and it does a lot less concentrated damage until you get that gear. So early game Nova might struggle a bit more, and also you're much more vulnerable to jumping into monsters and dying. Of course, since I'm playing hardcore solo self-found and my character doesn't even have infinity yet, I wanted a bit more flexibility. But once you get that negative res, once you get more lightning facets, I only got 2 lightning facets in here. I got 2 Turunes. The rest is like MF and res, so you can kind of see that. We do have CTA though, which is really nice. And of course on Ilzon we've got Insight, you know, Laying of Hands, just DR items. I have found a decent amount of DR items, and mana regeneration is actually very good. Makes us tankier. Interesting factoid about Ondel's Wisdom, besides giving us an insane amount of faster cast rate so we can hit that breakpoint, we puzzle boxed it. It's actually the only item I think that is not corrupted of mine, because puzzle boxing it I think is more effective than corrupting those. If I found a second one I might try, but I mean, it's pretty insane though. Got 4 sockets on the box. Any kind of staff that rolls like max 4 sockets is guaranteed anywhere from 2 to max sockets of the puzzle box, so that's really good. And then of course you can see here, you know, you don't need crazy stats necessarily, but mana per kill, life per kill tends to be very good in here, so you don't have to constantly be using potions and picking up things. And whether, it doesn't matter what lightning build you're capable of using depending on your gear level, you know, whether or not you have like a 40 skill Nova with infinity, so you're using Nova, you're going to want life per kill, mana per kill, no matter what approach you use. Yeah, I mean, you could even have an infinity staff Nova Sorc with Storm Spire on the Mercenary, and this would still be the case. You still want sustain. I like Magic Find in here, but once again, Magic Find does not affect runes charms, jewels, jewelry, drops, gems, or anything like that, or even PD2 items. It only affects items that can roll anywhere from magic to unique, and the game will always roll for unique first. So those would be armor and weapon items. And guess what? Guess what the ghosts can't drop? They can't drop those. So the only items that you'd be getting from the ghosts would actually be amulets and rings that could potentially roll unique. And they can't roll every unique Ami and ring in the game, but they can roll Stone of Jordan, they can roll Volcathos, the skill ring, they can roll the BK set ring, they can roll High Lords, they can roll a lot of very powerful, very effective items. So all of this stuff, of course, is very good. Now, just because you can't roll, believe it or not, you actually can't roll rainbow facets in here because it's not a high enough area level once again, unless you get a corrupted zone. So corrupted zones are OP. Alright, so I feel like I've kind of gone over most things. One thing I kind of want to show you guys though is a bit of a teaser. So if you guys want some proof here, so these are my runes, alright? Solo self-found hardcore. Now, you might not be too impressed, but you have to think about something here. So, from the assassin, I only found 2 Vexes and a Cham. Actually, no, 3 Vexes and a Cham. And 2 of those Vexes I used to make Call to Arms. I cubed them into an Ohm. I haven't made any other major rune words yet. And you might notice you still have the Cham there, and we have 1 of the Vexes, but you might be asking, where did all the other high runes come from? Well, that's the Sorceress. Literally the last session I did. Just the last session, the 10-hour Arcane session, we found 7 discrete runes. Not high runes of value, which is more like closer to 10, but 7 discrete runes that are Vex or higher. And we also found a goal, which is not a Vex or higher. But you can see there, it's pretty insane. And you'll notice on this Sorceress here, we've only played her 23 hours since, you know, twinking out her gear, you know, making her, you know, have all those really OP low level leveling items, killing Hell Bale so he can unlock corrupted zones, and then playing her in Arcane. So it's a pretty brand new character. You can see Kills All also is only at 65,000. So that's 7 runes like that. This area is nuts. Like I said, I will link my old school data video, and you guys can kind of make your own determinations. This place, when it comes to those target items, is crazy. I actually think it outstrips cows and Trav on even the most efficient builds, as long as you're doing this with the most efficient build as well, in terms of just those items. Now, Trav, of course, is better at jewelry. It can also drop every amulet ring, and of course it can drop facets. So Trav is pretty insane in that regard. It also drops a lot of those really good items more often. So that's why Travical is right up there with Arcane, just in other regards. Chaos is similar. The fact that you have a boss in Diablo and it's a level 85 area. Very similar stuff. Pit, you know, it's pretty consistent as well. So you can kind of see how these other areas stack up in different ways. But when it comes to these items, as I will repeat, this area is almost, I would say, when farmed with the 200 faster cast rate Lightsork at least, it is unmatched. It's unrivaled. It is crazy. And I know this because I farmed with virtually every build in multiple seasons, you know, every class. I've done all kinds of different farms to start a season out. And this area always stands out as insane when it comes to those, what I call currency items, as we've mentioned. Those runes, charms, jewels, jewelry, gems, and PD2 items, as I call them. They're just more likely to drop, a lot more likely, from both the chests and the ghosts. Alright, so let's actually do a demo farm here. So kind of, you have the basic stats on the screen. You can kind of see, you know, we have good res because our energy shield isn't very high. It's only 41%, so we still take a lot of damage to life. But overall, you know, if you balance your life and your mana, to make it to where, depending on how much damage you're taking to each based on your energy shield level, if you balance it out, you'll probably survive the best in more situations than not. And so that's usually how you allocate your vitality and energy, and then you put enough strength and dex into wear your gear. This actually does require some dex, oddly enough. And yeah, if I had Infinity, I'd probably slap it on the Mercenary, and we would do that. I actually think I could make one, but I'm actually missing like a Mal rune or something. I could cube up all my runes, but I kind of don't want to show you guys Infinity. I want to show you guys pre-Infinity, just to show you guys you don't need that. All you need is plus skills. You need high, faster cast rate on the Sorceress, and you'll be good. Whether it's Combustion, Charge Bolt, Chain Lightning, even using like the Spire of Lazarus, which is another good staff for Chain Lightning. You can upgrade that staff to get more faster cast rate using the weapon upgrade recipes. This one's already like an elite staff, so it doesn't need to be upgraded, but it already has 105 cast rate, so you're set to go. It's got a lot of very good defensive stats. 7,000 defense with just 1 point of shiver armor and this. The next level, I actually plan on putting 2 more points into strength here, so I can upgrade this to an Archon plate. So we'll have like closer to 10,000 defense. That'll be pretty nice. Maybe at least 8,000, right? Alright, anyway, so let's do a demo farm. So I'm going to show you guys how this works here. Now, if you get some really tanky monsters that are like lightning resistant or whatever, you can cast that static field. You can see that, cast static field. Static field will lower the res even more. For the most part, I'm targeting the ghosts though, and also some good dense packs of enemies. Sometimes just elite packs in general. And you can notice that I am insanely fast, right? Hellplague, nice. Now it's possible while making this video I might find some insane items, possibly runes. But, you know, I'm not necessarily counting on it. It's all about repetition like any farm. It's not like it's a magic farm that's going to give you a high rune the first time you kill something. Based on my data, though, you're going to probably average, particularly with the ability just to kill the ghosts and them not dying over the edge or anything on PD2, you're going to average probably about 1 high rune every 45 4-way runs. So that means if you do 1-way runs, it'll be about like 170, 180 of them, but that once again is an average. I think I ran like 105 4-way runs last time, and we found 7 discrete high runes once again, so which is a record for me, but it's not the first time I've seen this in Arcane. So I have seen 6 high runes in a similar session period. I've seen 5, seen 4 several times. What could I say? I played this game way too much, and you can kind of see it. But now, besides maxing out Charge Bolt, the synergies, Lightning Mastery, 1 point Warmth, 1 point Shiver Armor for the skills, I've also been putting a lot of and getting 1 point Energy Shield. I put a lot of points into Teleport to reduce the damage debuff, because that just translates into more effective damage more of the time. You see how many charms are dropping though? You see my loot filter going kind of nuts there? Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. What's interesting about this area is that as long as you're looking for the currency items, you're always going to find them. And it feels like every 5 runs or so, you're finding something. Whether it be a good charm, a good rune, a godly charm, a godly rune, a godly jewel, you know, it's almost too much fun when it comes to these things. And like I said, these types of items retain their value throughout a season. But yeah, this is how you run Arcane though in a 4-way session. As you can see, I killed the summoner, popping the chests. 200 FCR really pops off. You can do it with 105 faster cast rate too. It's just going to be a little slower. And with 105, you could even argue that maybe even on a Sorceress, maybe 1-way Arcane is a bit better. But since you have the mobility of Teleport, I would say you probably could still go for 4-way. So even if you don't have this faster cast rate, which is more ideal, you see it works very well. And once again, we don't have Infinity. I actually only have -7 enemy light res off of 2 junky lightning facets I found on the Assassin and Travancore. Put in the Ondel Staff along with some Tur runes for mana per kill. And a character like this is actually fast enough to complete 4-way before Bow runs out. Which is pretty insane. But you don't even need Infinity. Like, Charge Bolt this season is crazy. And, you know, the same would go for Chain Lightning. To have similar speed, though, you might need a couple more plus skills, maybe some more skill GCs. If you guys are trading, it's so much easier for trading to get the basic building blocks of this. I had to farm on my Sin a bit to even prep this character. But yeah, you can see there. I'm going to do a really fast run here, so I'm going to show you guys that if you can actually do it so fast that you don't need a rebow or anything. And another advantage of Arcane and just currency farming in general this season is that you have a currency tab in your shared stash, which is kind of nuts. It used to be a lot more tedious to put away and to stack your currency, because you'd have to go to a specific tab and all that and whatnot. Now you could just kind of put them all into one tab and then go right back to farming Arcane just by shift clicking your items into the stash. It's pretty insane. So season 11 is, I don't know, man, it's so much fun. And I've been having a great time playing this solo self-found. Hopefully we don't rip any characters, but it almost certainly will happen. We'll just go from there. You see how effective, though, this static field is, though? Like, it's so good. You can just see all these runes dropping. I'll use like a minor one there. See, that one's lightning enchanted, so that means he's lightning resistant, the monster. Just pop him as static field and he's good to go. Yeah, the goal here, though, let's see. Let's try to get it done before the bow runs out here. Now, after I demo this, I'm going to show you guys, using the same build, though, I'm going to show you guys how you would do one-way Arcane. And this is way more efficient on the less mobile builds, like I said, like the Assassins, the Amazons, heck, even the Paladins, like Holy Shock Paladins, Vengeance Paladins, other things that can also do this area very well. Even Holy Bolt, I suppose, once your damage gets high enough. Problem with Holy Bolt, though, is once again, you're up against the heavy magic-type damage resistance of the Ghosts, which is its own form of damage and resistance in the game. It doesn't just refer to every magic type damage. So the magic damage that Holy Bolt Foe does, you know, Bone Spear, Teeth, Ghosts are pretty resistant to that. Bone Spear, though, has such massive damage, though, that as long as you get the plus skills and maybe use Act 4 Light Merc for Sanctuary Aura, or use that Heavenly Garb armor like early in the game for some debuff on it, it'll work just fine. And you could also do it, so really want to emphasize how many different builds can do this. You can see, though, I'm killing the ghosts wherever they're at, though, and they're dropping items on the platform. Don't have to worry about it on Project Diablo 2. It's not a thing. Look how fast I filled up, though, with charms and whatnot. So, like, if you're looking for, like, infinite crafting materials, you want to sell them in bulk, even if you don't want to use them yourself. It's insanely good at dropping Worldstone shards, too. It doesn't quite keep pace, maybe, with Corrupted Zones in that regard, but it's not too far off. I think they actually nerfed the number of Worldstone shards this place dropped at one point because it was just so insane. It was actually better than Corrupted Zones, just because of the ghost density. Okay. So yeah. You should notice my bows are still running there. They're going strong. Look at all those gems. So those are P gems, flawless gems on my loot filter here. My loot filter is ADEV DH, by the way. It is in the launcher. You could just select the dark filter and be on your merry way and enable it in game using the settings. Be good to go. Notice how I do kill the density sometimes, so I'll kill like a bunch of Hell Clans. And notice how there'll be collateral damage from Hell Clans and Ghoul Lords going down. Those often drop high runes. They did in that last session where I found 7. Yeah, the Ghost dropped the lion's share of them, and the chests as well, which are the main targets. But a couple monsters also dropped 2 additional high runes. So that's pretty cool to know. So notice we didn't have to rebow at all. That's just how fast you can do this. You could go even faster if you're a bit more picky with what packs you choose to engage. Maybe not even trying for the Hell Clans at all. I do like clearing high density with Charge Bolt though. I feel like it's pretty good. Kind of depends on the skill in that regard, so kind of feel it out and get a feel for how efficient it feels. But not having the rebow feels nice, because then you don't have to worry about doing the whole bow thing again, which it doesn't take too much time, but it is something, right? It is something. There's a 3 skill ammy, there's a bunch of small charms. You'll notice it doesn't look like we found anything too special there, but you'll notice just how many of them we have found, and the quantity is it's the canary in the coal mine when it comes to this place, because it's all about quantity. You roll enough items in D2 and the GG ones will drop 100%, no problem. That's just how it works. And this item here is actually pretty decent. This is a 16 life small charm, so that's not bad. And that's just from literally a couple of runs, just finding all those crazy amounts of items. Now, lastly, what we're gonna do in this Arcane guide here, this Project Diablo 2 Arcane guide that is updated for Season 11, mechanics and things and whatnot, even for this awesome currency tab, as I'd like to emphasize. Just being able to like click your items on any stash tab and have them go into the currency tab is just so big. Anyway, so let's talk about the other farming strat though. So in multiple seasons I've started like Assassin and Amazon now, and I've actually chosen to farm Arcane, and that is when I was playing trade. So I was playing hardcore trade instead of hardcore solo self-found. Which, there is no official solo self-found mode in this game, but as a self-imposed restriction it's really fun, because more items like this, which you would probably never trade for or use, you actually find a use for, because it's really hard to find staves that are this good when you're just in the beginning and you want to get going, right? So that's really good stuff. I really enjoy it. But let's talk about how I farmed in previous seasons with the Assassin and the Amazon. So obviously farming an area with really narrow choke points on some of these characters is going to hamper your mobility. Particularly, like, let's say your Dragonflight's on cooldown, you killed a monster, and then you have to go through the teleports. That feels really bad, and it's going to slow you down quite a bit. Particularly on something like an Amazon, which can't blink at all. Your only choice is to go through a teleport, or use something like a Nausea Staff on swap, which feels even worse, because Amazon has such bad cast frames. So you really wouldn't want to do every side. You just wouldn't. Doing all 4 sides is pretty slow on most other classes besides Sorceress, Necromancer, anything that has really high mobility. Druid, of course, if you're running maybe Arctic Blast because of the negative cold res. I mean, you could do that if you want in here. There's definitely a lot of options. Like I said, more that I haven't mentioned. But notice, if you do that, you're gonna get caught up sometimes. Like, even the Gust cooldown can be annoying sometimes, trying to get over the ledges in the portal side, for instance. And the choke points and the stairs, and going around the stairs, and finding the stairs, and going around to the platforms, like here. You notice how sometimes you have to go all the way around and stuff, and just to kill a ghost, or you have to like wait for the ghost to come up here, or you can't attack it depending on your ability. These other three sides of Arcane are not very good for those lower mobility characters, and particularly lightning builds that can take the most advantage of this area with no natural lightning immunes. So what the side that you're going to actually want to do is the flats. Now, how do you identify the flats quickly from the waypoint? Notice how this side has a staircase, so you know that's not the flat. That's probably the stairs, or it's the platforms. Here you can see the portal pretty fast. That's not what you want. And then on this side you can see how it's platforming with pillars and whatnot. Well, that's definitely not what you want either. But one way you can identify the way that you actually want to run that's really easy to run for most characters with minimal gear, run it with just a Vigor Aura, Act 1 Mercenary, or just any kind of movement speed and any kind of basic blink like Dragonflight. The best way to do it is to check for that spike trap there in the beginning. So multiple directions have spike traps, but this one consistently has spike traps throughout. And the spike trap is easily spotted from the waypoint. You can kind of just like take a small look at it and you find the spike trap. So you might have to run around the waypoint a little bit to identify which side is which. But once you see that spike trap and you see that it's a nice narrow area, no bridges, no platforms, no stairs, you can be pretty confident this is what you want. Yeah, I don't have CBF on this build, as you might have noticed, so I actually purposely avoid getting frozen as much as possible. 75 cold res or above, though, definitely helps. But anyway, so this is the flats. You'll notice the flat area is very flat. Notice that it's linear. It doesn't restrict the mobility of a character that has to run at monsters. You could just run and stab like on the Amazon, run and throw javelins like on the Amazon. You could just run and Dragonflight as much as possible into packs of monsters, shredding them, and then Dragonflight into the next pack of monsters as soon as you run to them with high statted whatchamacallit, burst of speed. I don't know why I couldn't think of that there. Oh wow, area, it's interesting. Now, this one area with flats doesn't always have the summoner. So the chests rotate on one axis, and then the side, or the type of way the arcane is, rotates on the other. Which means that they're all random every game. So you might get the summoner on the flats, and the flats might be over here in this game. But maybe the flats are in the other direction in a different game. And then at the end is 3 super chests. So in that case, you get the super chests. So you might get the summoner sometimes, and you might get the super chests. So even running one-way arcane, you'll still get things like H keys and other things, right? Also, that's the first areas I've actually found on my solo self-found, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, as you can see, you could just clear the ghosts once again, or high-density monsters. On a lower mobility build, though, it might even be better just to clear most, or if not all, the monsters, particularly if it's something like Lightning Strike, or it just chains to every monster. And the reason why it's better to be more thorough is because it's easier to be more thorough, as you're just chaining to monsters on lower mobility builds, whereas with the Sorceress, you could just teleport over weak packs and skip them. Once again, that is a bit of an advantage of higher, faster cast rate, and of course, the teleport skill on the Sorceress. So, yeah, I mean, that's basically it, though. I think I've gone over pretty much everything I want to. Spawning in Act 4, all the cool ways that PD2, particularly in Season 11, makes this really cool, and other things as well. Now, one thing you might notice with the flats, which is kind of why I reloaded the game there, just to show you guys, you can see the portal here, right? So you know this isn't it. You can see the stairs again. Stairs are bad. Platforms, stairs. Just want to show you guys a couple different iterations of this here. Yeah, look at all those runes. Okay, anyway, the flats, you might not see a spike trap. Nice maps, once again. Good stuff from this area. But yeah, you might not see a spike trap, you might see a tower. So lightning towers are also very common on the flats, as I call them. So you might see the lightning tower, and then in the other sides you'll see the portals and the stairs. Once you see a lightning tower and you don't see any portals and stairs, that's probably also the flats. You'll notice that there's a bunch of lightning towers on this one. So it does vary a little bit. There are some variations to how the layout is, but you'll notice further along there are still spike traps. So it still kind of fits the mode, but you might view something a little bit differently from the waypoint, so you know which direction to go on your one-way arcane farmer. And the way you just farm one-way arcane is you farm the one-way and then you reload the game. That's why it's called one-way arcane, and then you farm the one-way again. Flats every time. And that is how you efficiently farm arcane in Project Diablo 2. You can see Sorceress's telekinesis, which is amazing for the chests. Lightning Sorc is definitely, in my opinion, the best possible build to run arcane with, but like I said, there's a lot of ways, a lot of other builds that do nearly as well, and with limited gear as well. And so it's not just a one build wonder situation. There's a lot of builds that do nearly as well, or just as well, or otherwise. So anyway, guys, get back to that farming in Season 11 and beyond. And I will see you guys in the next one. Make sure to let me know in the comments below what you think about this video, whether or not it helped illuminate why people are farming this area, or maybe why you should farm this area. And yeah, it's super OP. Hopefully you guys enjoy this beautiful, beautiful area. It's always been my favorite farm since I discovered just how ridiculous it is in LOD and started to gather that data. Just blown away at the power of it, and yeah, I guess with that, let's see. So yeah, look how many runes and stuff are in the inventory. It's just crazy. But with that, I'm actually gonna just I'm gonna slam this area. It's because we found it. YouTube might be curious. One socket. Well, still something I don't have, so it might come in handy later. But with that, I bid you guys all on YouTube farewell. Dark Humility over and out. Good luck. Crush that arcane. Crush his farms and get those high runes. I'll see you guys soon. Let's get it.